Welcome everyone. Today we'll be talking about Chapter 3. Chapter 3 deals with consciousness and the two-track mind. So the information that you need to know for this chapter will be consciousness, selective inattention, inattentional blindness, dual processing, and the two-track mind. And then we will also talk about sleep, and then some sleeping disorders such as narcolepsy and sleep apnea. And then lastly, we'll follow up with psychoactive drugs. And the three psychoactive drugs that I will talk about, the three categories that I have, are depressants, stimulants, and hallucinogens. So we'll talk about that. Now, this main chapter, chapter 3, it talks a lot about consciousness. Now, consciousness, if you can think about it, there's different levels of consciousness. There can be consciousness under the influence of drugs. So drug-induced consciousness. There could be consciousness as far as dreaming or being hypnotized. A hypnotic state is also a part of consciousness. And then some other ones include meditation as well. Meditation can also be considered a part of consciousness. Now, if you're thinking, why could meditation be a part of consciousness? We'll talk about it, but in short, meditation is sort of where you are trying to be self-aware of not just your own body, but also those what is around you as well. So consciousness is the is the ability or subjective but not objective state of being currently aware within yourself or outside of oneself. Now, when it talks about subjective, it means that it's based upon influence. So that influence can be personal. When it means objective, that means it is the totally opposite of that. Now, consciousness, as I mentioned in regards to when I talked about meditation, it is all about being self-aware. So let me give you an example of self-awareness. Now, have you ever been sleeping, and as you're sleeping, you're dreaming, and you start to, in your dream, I will say, in your dream you will, let's say you're thinking about a sound. So that sound can be very loud and can be like you're dreaming of an ambulance sound or a police sound. Now let's say you're dreaming about those sounds, and then all of a sudden you wake up and then it is your alarm clock. Now that is all about consciousness, because you are now self-aware of, you're coming into a realization like, okay, as you're beginning to wake out of your sleep, you are starting to realize that this is no longer a dream. It is now becoming my alarm clock that is waking me up now. One of the other things is being conscious as well is how is it possible that you can be sleeping but then also at the same time not fall out of your bed? Especially if if your bed isn't placed near a wall or something that could level out the weight if you do, turn around a lot in bed and so on. So consciousness is all about being self-aware of not only yourself but also of your surroundings as well. Now, the psychologist that founded self-awareness also had to deal with introspection. Now, I hope you remember these names because we talked about it, but we may have touched upon it briefly. And once you were reading your books on chapter 1, You should have noticed them. But the two psychologists that founded introspection, well, the first one mainly was Edward Titchener. Now, the person who contributed to it was also known as the father of psychology, who was named William Wundt. Okay, so William Wundt, and then introspection was founded specifically by Edward Titchener. Now, on the exam, I won't be grading you or testing your ability based upon those two names at all, but it's just something I wanted to mention. All right. Now, examples of consciousness. So, just so you have a framework of mind. So, up here it says that some states that occur spontaneously, that could be daydreaming, drowsiness, or dreaming. Some examples of consciousness that are physiological induced are hallucinogens, which we'll talk about, orgasm, food or oxygen starvation. And then some that are psychologically induced are sensory deprivation, hypnosis, and then also meditation. You don't have to know this slide, but you just want to know specifically what are some examples of consciousness. Some already mentioned was meditation, hypnosis, dreaming, and then also drug induced. Now, when we talk about consciousness, there's two different sort of levels in regards to consciousness. Um, let's talk about the first one. Let's talk about selective attention. Now, selective attention is where you are focusing your attention on a small portion at a time. So you are very narrow focused. So in selective attention, you are eliminating multitasking. As many of you are aware, multitasking brings your productivity down and also your efficiency. So selective attention it also focuses on the cocktail party effect. Now, when you think of a cocktail party, what comes to my mind is that you are in a room with a lot of people, sometimes with music, sometimes it cannot be with music, but mainly is, for the most part, is usually with some sort of music. And that music is very loud. And also you have to work against everyone else that is talking all around you. Now, selective attention is that you focus specifically on one individual that you are speaking with during that cocktail party. So you are able to eliminate all the other noise so that you are tuning in to specifically what the person that you are conversating with is talking about or discussing with you at that time. Another example of selective attention is being influenced by emotions. Specifically, I want to talk about anger. So, for instance, have you ever been angry? Many of you have been angry, okay? But when you are angry, and let's say this individual made you very, very angry, what tends to happen is that you now focus, all of your attention is being focused on them. Many of times when you are angry, sometimes you may be focused on that individual, but you still miss out key parts of their conversation because of your being angry. So you do focus a lot on them, but you also miss out on sort of context on the conversation because that individual made you upset. All right. Now, if you are thinking about selective inattention, sometimes selective attention cannot be good because you can be focused on one thing at one time that you forget about your surroundings. You forget about things that are going on that can be either affect you negatively or positively. Um, so that's something to sort of keep in mind with selective attention. Now the next one is inattentional blindness. Now, inattentional blindness, what what they did was that they did an experiment, and in that experiment, they asked a group of individuals to watch a video, and in that video, there were kids that were passing around a basketball. So what they told them to do was just watch how many times the kids pass around the basketball to one another. Now, as they were watching this video, some of the participants missed the transparent young lady with a red umbrella walking through the crowd. And the numbers up here, as you can see, it says 21 of the participants noticed, all right, the young lady walking with the umbrella. So that's usually 1 out of 5. Now, the other participants kept their vision, or they sort of kept their vision on something else. Now, this is sort of what can happen here, is that we're so focused on one thing, on what the idea is, or this video, that we forget about so many different other things, which is unintentional blindness. Now, again, let's keep in mind we have selective attention, and then we also have unintentional blindness. The main difference between the two is that one is focused on the topic or the individual at hand, and then the other one, unintentional blindness, is where you're so focused that you forget about other things that are happening around you. Now, I have these videos here in regards to unintentional blindness. They're pretty good videos. I highly suggest that you watch them, but I will post them in Blackboard, so you'll see this slide again. Now, I'm not going to touch upon this a lot, but let me just say something really quickly about dual processing. All right. Now, in dual processing, they have 2 levels. So 2 levels, 1 high track and then 1 low track. The high track is consciousness, and then the low track, which is unconsciousness. Now, consciousness, which is the high track, and dual processing means that our minds take deliberate actions that we know that we are doing. And then the low track says that our minds sort of perform sort of automatic actions without us even being aware of them. You can see the differences between the high track and the low track. The high track is where we are focusing our attention on either problem solving, naming an object, or defining a word. There's plenty of more examples that you can think of in regards to high track, but those are some of the examples that I wanted to mention. And then low track talks about walking, processing sensory details such as what are you saying, what are you touching, what are you eating, what are you tasting, and so on. So what this is pretty much saying is that we all have a dual processing. So there's 2 levels, consciousness and unconsciousness. Unconsciousness is that we don't have to think about doing them. They just automatically just happen. For instance, if we always had to count or always think about our heartbeat and controlling and maintaining our heartbeat, for many of this, or I want to say for all of us, that would be a very, very daunting task. So we all have this dual processing in our bodies. Now, consciousness again is where we put the effort and time into doing something that's going to take up a lot of effort and a different amounts of energy. Okay, so those are the only two things that I want to mention in regards to this slide. Now, sleep. Now, sleep is another state of consciousness, as you already know that I talked about in the second slide in regards to consciousness. I'm sorry, the third slide. Now, we'll go into sleep in a little bit here, but as you all are aware, sleep is based upon a 24-hour cycle, and it is roughly matched to the day and night cycle of light and also dark. Now let me go to the next slide. Now, I want you to just think really quickly about why do we sleep? Now, these are the things as far as why we sleep. So sleep protected our ancestors from predators. Sleep restores and repairs the brain and the body. Sleep builds strength, and it strengthens our memories. Sleep facilitates creative problem solving, and sleep is the time when growth hormones are active. Have you ever gone a day, some of you have gone 2 days without sleeping? What usually happens to your body? When I was in college, what happened to my body when I decided not to go to sleep for a day or two? I noticed that my eyes and my vision was getting very, very, very blurry. And it wasn't that I was on something else. It wasn't a drug or anything of that nature. It was mainly because did not get the sleep that I needed to get. And it was partially because I told myself that I would sacrifice my sleep just to make sure that I did well on this exam. Now, many of you think, well, if it's exam next day, if I can't sleep, then I'm not going to do that. But you want to be mindful of that, because what tends to happen is that your brain cannot build your memory. You'll start to forget things a lot more if you don't get that sleep. So sleep is very, very important. Many of you have heard the phrase sleep on it. What is that phrase pretty much saying? It's pretty much saying that sleep on it. If you have a big decision the next day, if you have an interview the next day, sleep on it, because the sleep will help strengthen your body, strengthen your mind, so that you'll be focused and that you'll have a clear mind going into tomorrow, or making a clear-minded decision. So sleep, as you know, is very important. Now, how many hours of sleep do you need? For the most part, sleep does depend upon the person, but typically what it's saying is that most of us need roughly 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night. I know many of you may not even get that. That is okay. However, you want to know your body. Your body can tell you how much sleep you really need. Now, do animals sleep? Yes, they do. All right. Some examples here. Dolphins sleep while swimming. How is that possible? Think about it. Dolphins spend most of their time in water. All right. So how are they going to sleep? They sleep while swimming. So look it up. All right, I can guarantee you'll see dolphins sleep while swimming. I know many of you are looking at that and like that can't be true, but trust and believe it is true. All right, horses sleep while standing up. Many of you sleep in a chair. Many of you can even sleep standing up. All right, so horses do it actually while they sleep, standing up. Now, some animals require numerous amounts of sleep. For instance, bats and opossums sleep 18 to 20 hours a day. And then on the other end, you have elephants and giraffes who only sleep 3 to 4 hours a day. Now, if you think about this, sleep drain while you are asleep, it helps build recovery, it helps build your immune system as well. Because what tends to happen is that if you are sick, it, a possibility that can lead you to being even more sick is that by not getting enough sleep. So some of the animals, I went off topic there, but some animals require much sleep or less sleep because it depends on how much they are moving their bodies. Depends on how much energy they are expending or exhausting each day. For giraffes, they take up less energy, so they only need that amount of sleep per day. All right, and then bats, on the other end, they use up so much energy that they need to sleep 18 to 20 hours per day. Many of you notice when we sleep, we lose brain power. We do sometimes gain weight um, because our body is always up, so we tend to munch on some things, munch on snacks, munch on food because our body hasn't gotten enough sleep. As I mentioned, we tend to get sick. We are also very irritable, as if we know, especially for some people, if you don't get coffee, you can be irritable. So if you don't, for many of you, if you don't sleep, you can also be very irritable as well. Your tolerance of things are much lesser, and you begin to sort of feel old as well. Now, we already know sleep affects our entire body system. I mentioned here the slide mentions a few of where specifically sleep affects our body. So the brain, our immune system, fat cells, joints, so increased inflammation and arthritis. I know when I didn't sleep a few days, my joints were definitely inflamed. My body felt very weak. All right, so it does sleep affects our muscles, stomach, and also our heart as well. Now, let's get into some sleep disturbances. Now, there's three that I do want to talk about on today. The first one is insomnia. The next one is going to be narcolepsy, and then the third one is going to be sleep apnea. Now, insomnia is the most prevalent sleep disorder that we have. It is the inability to fall asleep or stay asleep. So I want you to think about this very quickly. What can cause insomnia? Now, insomnia can be caused by a few different things. It could be caused by depression. It could be caused by anxiety. It could be caused by drugs. It could be hereditary. All right, so passed down. So some of us may experience a form of insomnia, but that doesn't necessarily mean it is insomnia. All right, so this is insomnia is only when it's an ability to fall asleep or stay asleep. Now, The second one is narcolepsy. So, narcolepsy is a sleep disturbance when you fall asleep at random times. Okay? So, these times can be when you're laughing, having an important conversation with someone, and then all of a sudden you fall asleep. All right? And I'm not talking about the conversations that you may have for like hours, or you're talking to someone that likes to talk a lot and so on and you fall asleep. No, it's when it happens at just odd and wrong place, wrong timing things. All right. One example I can give of narcolepsy is that I recall a student telling a story where um, one individual fell asleep at a red light. And when they fell asleep, it was for at least 2 minutes. Now, if you've been at a stop sign driving, not a stop sign, a red light driving, you know for the most part that sign is going to turn green eventually. All right. And what happened was that the individuals in the car tried to wake the person who had narcolepsy up. What happened was that the person didn't wake up until after those 2 minutes. Once 2 minutes hit, the person woke up and was like, and started driving again. Like nothing even happened. All right. So this can, I don't know if you know someone who has narcolepsy, but it can be very disturbing, especially if you are unaware of what the effects are. All right. So narcolepsy, as it is here, it results from failure of the brain to properly regulate sleep patterns. Now, sleep apnea, all right, which is the last sleep disturbance. So sleep apnea is the complete absence or airflow of or reduced airflow. This is where you are unaware of what is going on and then you go back to sleep. Now, sleep apnea usually lasts for about 10 seconds, but however, it happens several times during the night. When it talks about sleep apnea, it's not referring to snoring. All right, snoring is something totally different here. Sleep apnea is when, again, where it's a complete absence or reduced airflow. So the person is unaware of what is going on. So airflow completely stops and lasts for about 10 seconds. And then they go back to sleep happily. Now, if you can imagine this happening during the night, it can be very scary. All right, can be very disturbing as well. But this is another one of the sleep disturbances. So again, just to mention, the three that we have are insomnia, narcolepsy, and then the last one, sleep apnea. All right. I'm not going to touch upon this slide too much here, but it mentions how do you sleep well. All right. One of the things that's very important in regards to sleeping well is that you want to turn your lights low and then also turn off any screens. So if you have an alarm clock that is bright, if you have your cell phone that is bright, it's good to place something on top of them or turn it off actually to help you get to sleep much faster. One of the things you want to be conscious of is that if you have an alarm clock and during the night, if you continue to look at it, so you wake up, you look at the time, your sleep is actually getting decreased because you're constantly being aware of, oh man, I only have 2 more hours of sleep. Oh no, I only have 1 more hour of sleep. Oh no, I only have 30 minutes of sleep. So it's good to just turn all your screens off. The next one I do want to mention that is very important is to eat early and also drink less alcohol and caffeine. I'll talk about it, I believe, on the next slide here. If not, I'll mention it on the next slide. So the sleeping myths. All right, I'm not going to talk about all of them here, but it's a few I want to note. Drinking alcohol before bed helps you sleep better. This is a common myth in regards to having effective sleep. What tends to happen is that yes, alcohol does put you to bed, especially they say wine puts you to bed, goes to sleep, makes you go to sleep much easily. But what tends to happen is that you begin to wake up during the night. So you fall asleep quicker, but during the night you are tossing and turning, or you may tend to wake up. So drinking alcohol does not help you sleep better. All right, you start to lose your quality of sleep. You may say, okay, well, I still slept 8 hours, but what was the quality of those 8 hours? Was it really 8 hours, 8 quality hours of sleep? Was it 5 quality hours of sleep? For the most part, it usually is not. All right. The next one I do want to talk about is you can catch up on an accumulated sleep loss with one night of super sleep. When I was in college, I thought I could do that. I thought, well, if I didn't sleep for a few days, 2 days, I can go to sleep for 15 hours straight and then make up for that lost time of sleep that I didn't get for the past 2 days. I found out it just doesn't work like that. Okay? It just does not work like that. Your body just cannot get adjusted, because after those 15 hours of sleep, I felt even more tired than if I was awake. And I'm like, how did I got 15 hours, but I was still very tired. So if you're thinking about that, you may want to just reconsider, because it just doesn't help you make up for that lost time. All right. All right. So I have another video on sleeping, but I will post this as well on Blackboard, so you'll see this again if you do want to watch it. All right. Now, what do we dream? All right. So when we sleep, we usually dream. All right. Now, I don't want to say usually, but we always dream. All right. We're dreaming about something when we are sleeping. All right. So those dreams can often include some negative event, emotion, especially failure. So those failures of dreams can be being attacked, being rejected, having bad luck, falling, or being pursued. So dreams, usually for the most part, it does result in some sort of not a good dream. Some of us have good dreams, but a majority of us don't have good dreams. All right. Now, one of the other things that I do want to mention from this slide is that dreaming takes place during REM sleep. So during that REM sleep, 4 to 6 dreams per night, totaling 1 to 2 hours. So during that REM sleep of the point during the night that you are sleeping, that is the deep sleep. So REM is the sort of the deep sleep that is occurring in which dreams happen. And during that REM sleep, you can have up to 4 to 6 dreams. All right. Many of us, when you are dreaming, you think of just the one that happened last. So the one that's before you wake up. But what they're saying now is that there's actually other dreams that have happened and have occurred during the night, but you just don't remember them. All right. Now, why do we dream? It's a common question that some of us may not have even ever thought about, but psychologists have sort of figured out why we dream. right? So in regards to why we dream, there's numerous different theories of psychologists figuring out why we dream. But there's one well-known of those numerous theories um, that Sigmund Freud talked about. Now, Sigmund Freud, if you can remember from the first chapter, he was all about psychoanalysis. So what his dream theory said was that dreams, they are a form of wish fulfillment. So wish fulfillment to him was saying that we are playing out unconscious desires. So he said, well, we dream because if we didn't dream the things that we are dreaming about, if we actually tried to play them out into real life, they would be forbidden. What he is saying is that if we always dreamed about something forbidden, that means we couldn't fulfill it in actual real life. So let's dream about it because that's the way we'll be fulfilled. Pretty much that's what his theory was talking about. Now with his theory, he mentioned that there's two levels of content. So two levels to this theory. So there's a manifest and then there's a latent. Now, the latent talked about the hidden meaning of the dream. Manifest on the other hand talked about the apparent meaning of the dream. So the storyline of the dream itself. So the manifest is sort of what you remember when you wake up. Now psychoanalytic, what they did with client individuals who came to see them was that they tried to look deeper into the dream. So they tried to uncover the latent, the hidden meaning of the dream. Now, if you're thinking about this theory of Sigmund Freud of wish fulfillment, and you're like me, you can be saying, well, there's so many different interpretations to a dream. If you're sitting down with a psychologist who has a theory in dream theory, who practices psychoanalysis, and they say, well, I think your dream is such as this and this. But how do you know that is the true meaning of the dream? What if it's something else? So many psychologists try to disapprove his theory, Sigmund Freud's theory, mainly because they thought, well, there's so many interpretations of a dream. How can we say this one matches that specifically, and specifically to that individual? So they tried to say, well, this theory is not valid. However, it was still the first well-known theory. Now, the last thing I do want to talk about are psychoactive drugs. Now, there's different categories in regards to psychoactive drugs. There are depressants, stimulants, and then hallucinogens. Now again, depressants, stimulants, and hallucinogens. Now, psychoactive drugs are anything chemically that can cause changes in psychological activities. So those activities can include sensation, self-control, perception, emotion, your thinking, your behavior, your judgment, your memory, and so on. So these drugs induce a change in your psychological perspective. Okay? Now there's different types of psychoactive drugs. There's caffeine, there's alcohol, there's nicotine, there's prescription medications, and then there's also drugs. Now, these psychoactive drugs affect our consciousness. All right. So it can either speed you up, it can slow you down, it can actually let you down, feel very inferior, feel very weak, and then they can also convince you differently. And what I mean by convincing you differently, for example, when you talk about alcohol, everybody always says blame it on the alcohol for any excuse that happens during that time. However, alcohol is a drug that can affect your inability to think and also make decisions correctly. That's why they say don't drink and drive, because now you are now being induced. Your judgment is now being induced by this drug. So let's talk about the first one here. So depressants. So chemicals that can reduce neural activity and other body functions. Okay. So on here I mentioned there is alcohol, which slows down your activity in the central nervous system. Okay. Now let's talk about a few things here with alcohol. All right. I'm not going to talk about all of them because um, I know this information can be very, very long here. Um, but think about this. What is the BAC limit? Right. So the blood alcohol content limit. How much is considered one drink? What is binge drinking? What type of alcohol can get you drunk faster? Now, when I talk about alcohol, some of you may not drink. All right. But I'm not talking about alcohol to get you caught up in alcohol. I talk about alcohol because it's very, very important for you to know. Now, let me just talk about one of the questions here. Now, what is binge drinking? Now, binge drinking is where you have a certain amount of drinks in one night, depending upon if you are a male or a female, that can be considered binge drinking. Okay? Now, for instance, I'm not sure the numbers here exactly, but let's say, for instance, binge drinking can be considered if it's for male, let's say 3 or 4 drinks in one sitting. So that could be in a 2-hour time frame. That could be considered binge drinking. Okay. Now I'm not sure if that's true or not, but that's just an example here, so that you have this in context. Now, drinking, again, one drink, if you are taking a shot, that is considered one drink. If you're drinking a 12 fluid ounce of beer, that is considered one drink. If you are drinking wine, I believe it's 0.4 ounces, maybe 0.5. So 0.4 ounces is considered of wine a glass. So one drink. All right. So I know many individuals think, well, I just took 3 shots. That's not really 3 drinks. Yes, it is. All right. It's the same thing if a person had 3 drinks of a beer. All right. 0.12 ounces. That's considered 3 drinks, just the same as one shot is considered a drink. All right. So you want to get these things into context here. But I encourage you to look up the other questions because it is very, very important. All right. So as I mentioned here at the bottom here, you have 12 fluid ounces of regular beer. All right. Malt liquor, 5 ounces. But again, it is also between 4 and 5. and then 1.5 ounces of a shot. Usually it's supposed to be one, but we'll say 1.5 is considered one drink. So all of these things here are considered one drink. So you may just want to think about this. Now depressants. All right. Now depressants are opiates. So they block pain, induce drowsiness, and then also slow down breathing. So it is also used in its raw form, an opiate poppy, which can also be used for making heroin. So those are depressants. All right, depressants can be over the counter or under the counter. All right. One of the main things for over the counter drugs. Excuse me. There's Advil, there is Aleve, Tylenol. Those are considered depressants because they block the pain. Last thing are stimulants, so drugs which intensify neural activity and bodily functions. So stimulants can be caffeine, nicotine, cocaine, and then also ecstasy. All right, ecstasy. All right. So these stimulants, your bodily functions can be some symptoms here. All right, dilated pupils, increased breathing, and heart rate. It can also be increased blood sugar or decreased appetite as well. So these are the stimulants. Caffeine we definitely talked about here. Okay, so caffeine. I'm not going to talk about it here much, but caffeine. So again, it disrupts your sleep for 3 to 4 hours. Can lead to withdrawal symptoms if used daily. Many of you notice if you are a regular coffee drinker, let's say you don't drink coffee one day, you'll have headaches, irritable, you're fatigued, difficulty concentrating, and you are depressed. Again, this goes back to our conversation in regards to neurotransmitters and what you are doing in regards to neurotransmitters if you are drinking coffee each day. Again, everything in moderation. All right, nicotine I'm not going to talk about. Now, the last one here is hallucinogens. All right. So drugs that produce hallucinogens, all right, so altered moods and distorted perception and thought. Example of hallucinogens include sights, sounds, odors, or other sensations that are not present. If you look at this picture here, some of you may say 3, some of you may see 4. With hallucinogens, you are now being hallucinated, so you don't even know if there's 3 or there's 4. All right. So it alters your perception and your thought. Now, some of the hallucinogens here that we have: LSD, one of the most well-known hallucinogens. All right. It produces extreme changes in sensation and perception. So your emotions run wild and bleed into one another. The person tripping can quickly flip between depression and joy, excitement and terror. So LSD is sort of one of the hallucinogens. So this drug is very, very concentrated, very potent, which can alter your sensation and perception. Some other ones: marijuana, another word for it, weed, another word for it, cannabis. All right. This one is the most widely used illegal drug. I know some states right now are going to change that here, but since we are in New Jersey, I can say it is illegal. So it's the most popular drug in the Western world. So in the U.S., this is the most popular drug. All right. Now, what they've said here was that this contains 50 to 70% more cancer-causing hydrocarbons than tobacco. Many of you have just read that statement and said, "Get out of here. That is no way possible." If you don't believe that quote right there, you may want to look this up. All right. You may want to look it up. But there has been research on marijuana that it can lead to dependence, memory impairment, and uh, affect your attention and your learning. There's been tons of research on regards to the effects of marijuana. It can also affect your learning and also your thinking as well. I know as states begin to change the ruling on this, they'll still say marijuana is legal. However, you can only be admitted, or you can only have a certain amount of it, because they know if it was all hands off, some things would happen. So something to think about here. All right. Now, what can psychoactive drugs do? Can cause you to be dependent, so you'll always need the drug just to get through the day. All right. It can also build up your tolerance. So now you have the drug, you've been using it, but you don't get the same effect or the same high as before. So now you need even more of it, or using it a lot more during the day. So you build up your tolerance. It can also make you have withdrawal symptoms, as duly noted. All right, so you'll be craving this thing. You'll also be um, your hands may shake because you have to have it in your hands. You may be very irritable because um, just because of what the effects can do based upon these psychoactive drugs. So they can alter your mood, again your memory, and so on. So you want to be mindful. All right. I'll stop here really quickly here, but does anyone know who this is? This is J.L. Strauss. Now, if anyone remembers J.L. Strauss, she was one of the winners of the winner of America's Next Top Model in 2007. All right. To the left, that is the picture that they took of her in 2007. To the right of that is where they took the picture of her in 2011. You can't even really, well, you can know it's her, but it's the effects of it are very dramatic. All right. Now this is a true story here. All right. She was addicted to meth. All right. Being in being in the light where other people can see her, being in the limelight, being around stars, she started to get addicted to methane. Now, she doesn't look like this now, but that is what she looked like before. All right. So far, she's been 3 years sober, and she hasn't looked back, which is good. Um, but this is one thing that you want to be mindful of, that can happen to individuals if they use psychoactive drugs here. Okay. Now that's it regarding chapter 3. I hope you were able to listen to it and enjoyed it. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me or speak to me on the phone. So I hope to see you all within 2 weeks. So the Monday after President's Day, that is the next time I will see you. Okay? Have a great day.